Hello everyone and welcome to Clarity 16.1.2 Feature Supportability Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and as part of this section we will be talking about the Clarity mobile app enhancements. As part of this release, we've made enhancements to two specific areas. The first is the timesheet functionalities. In the timesheet, we have now provided the ability to return your own timesheet. We also now have the capability to view future open time periods within My Timesheets. The second area is the general enhancements to the app, where now we support the modern UX branding within the mobile app. And second is we've introduced the user settings page that'll allow the user to configure their landing page within the mobile app. Customers have been using the mobile app for a while, and one of the requests they had was that the users that do not have approval access are not able to return their own timesheets. Second is customers have also asked that users would want to enter time for the future time periods, and today the only future time period they see is the next period and nothing beyond. And finally, there were a few customer asked defects in regards to the mobile app that we would be addressing in this release. So specifically, the mobile app, which is going to come out after Clarity 16.1.2, is going to be the mobile app version 3.2.1. And it will include the following changes. It'll have the ability to return your own timesheets, ability to view past and future timesheets, ability to have each user define a default mobile landing page, and finally the ability for the mobile app to use the Clarity Modern UX branding. Note, the branding will only work with Clarity version 16.1.2 or higher. In regards to returning your own timesheets, now the user will have access to do so by using the floating menu within the timesheet. So again, this is specific to users that use the My Timesheets within the mobile app. When they go in to a specific timesheet, in the past they were not able to return those timesheets that were submitted. Now they can do that by essentially using the floating menu option as shown on the screen, which is the return. The user can return their timesheets that have been submitted, and if they have approval access, then they can also return approved timesheet. This functionality is similar to what a user can do within the UX. The timesheets return will then automatically have the status set to return, and it will be editable. When going into the My Timesheet part of the mobile app, the users in the old releases would see the current period, next period, previous period, and under previous period they would have seen basically the ability to see all past time periods. We have removed that, so now you will no longer see that link which showed all past time periods, and instead we've now added a new filter option. The filter is going to be on the top right of the page, which will then allow the user to filter for timesheet based on status and time period. So specifically, let's talk about the filter status when you touch on the filter icon, you will see a new My Timesheet filter page. In there will be two sections. The first on top is going to be the status section, and second at the bottom is going to be the time period. The status section will have all the possible statuses for a timesheet, and the user can select one or multiple of those status if they want to filter by status. And the second is the time period. The time period section is required, which means in order for you to filter, you have to populate a start and an end date. Once you've populated the value, the user can then click on the apply button, and at that point, all the timesheet that match the filter criteria will then automatically be displayed to the user on the screen. If the user ever want to clear that filter, they can go back to the filter and click on the or touch on the filter button. So again, going through a little bit more in regards to the filter status. The status is not required for filtering. If the user leaves the status unselected, then we will return all timesheets using all statuses within the time period. The user can select one or multiple status, in which case we will only return the time sheets or time periods within the specified time period. To reset a filter option, the user can touch on the clear button. Note that when first populating the filter values, the clear button will not be there. The clear button only appears when the user has populated a filter value and want to reset that value. The apply button will be grayed out till the user populates the time period, which is the start and end date. The start and end date, as mentioned, is required, and the general rule of finding the timesheets within those period is any time period that has a date that falls within the filter date, then those timesheets will be returned. When touching on the start or the end date, by default, we set today's date as the value, and the user can change to any desired date. Let's go through a few examples to understand how the start and end date filter works in the mobile app. This filter is different from how it functions in the UX, because in the UX you can filter for any time periods based on either the time period start date or time period end date. We felt that for a user in a mobile app, it should be a little bit more lenient and more flexible, so that the user that is trying to enter does not need to remember specific time period date ranges, but can just remember a calendar date range and populate that. The app will then automatically find any time periods within that specific calendar dates. So let's go through the example to clarify this further. So in here, I have set up my time period as follows, where there is a time period for March 27 to April 2nd, another time period for April 3rd to April 9, and then 10 to 16, 17 to 23, 24 to 30. These are the time periods on a weekly basis. Now, if I go to the mobile app, and let's go through the different examples, where if I set the start date in the filter to April 3rd and end date to April 5th, that date, when I look at it, only falls within April 3rd to 9. That means the only one time sheet will be returned back to me, which would be for the time period of April 3rd to April 9th. Now if I enter April 5th to April 15th, April 5th is in the middle of this time period, and April 15th is in the middle of the second time period, which means I expect both of these time periods to return, which is what will happen. I enter April 10 to April 16, which is exactly the start and finish of this. That means I will only get one time period. If I enter April 5th to April 20, that means it's in the middle of this time period and the middle of the third time period right here. So I should get all three of these, which is what happens. If I enter April 3rd, which is the start of this, till April 30th, like end of the fourth one, so I should get all four of them. And then finally, if I enter from April 1st to April 30th, which is the start of the month to the end of the month, and the time period is where the April 1st is in the middle of this time period, so I'll get this all the way to the last one, so I'll get all 5 of them. So the start and end date does not represent the time period start or end date. It is just the date range you're looking for, and we will find all the time periods within that date range you specified in your filter. We've also added a user settings page. This user setting page will be a new menu. When you log into the mobile app, you will see this new menu called settings listed under menu. This would be the last menu option. When navigating to this settings page, the user will see their avatar, they will see their full name, and they will see one option that they can set, which is the default landing page. The default landing page, when touching on it, will show the menu items that the user has access to. In this example, I have access to my timesheets, review and approved, and action items, so I can set any one of those 3 as my default landing page. If I only had access to 2 of them, then I would only see those 2 values, and I can set any one of those as my default landing. What that means is when I log out and log into the mobile app, whatever is set as my default landing will be exactly where my screen will appear, or the page will be displayed to me, and I can then change that to anything else, as well as the settings is set based on the user that is logging into that mobile app. What that means is if I use my app for testing purpose and I log in as multiple users, I can set a landing page by user within the same app, and it'll remember that. There is no specific access required to navigate to this page. A user with just the mobile access should be able to see this page. However, the access given for the other pages will determine where they can set their landing page to. As part of this release, we are now also going to support the modern UX branding. If you remember, in the modern UX, the branding is under the system settings page, where the administrator can configure what should be the background and foreground color for your Clarity app. We take that same settings and we can now apply that into your mobile app. So if on your server side you have set up the color to be green and the foreground to be light, then the mobile app, we would set the background and the foreground for the menu and the header based on the background and foreground color. The branding does not apply any logos, which means if you have also uploaded a logo to your server settings page, we will not apply that right now. That is something that's planned for the future. And the branding is not applied to any of the floating menus or buttons. This is being consistent with how the Clarity UX is. All right, with that, let's see the product in demo. So here I've logged in as a user to my Clarity Mobile, and in there I've by default landed onto my timesheets. And the first thing you would notice that I see the same standard the 3 time periods, which is the current time period, next, and previous, along with their status and so on. But you'd also notice that I no longer have the option right here which listed how many past open time periods are out there, which when I touch on would have then expanded to show me all the past ones. Instead, now I have this new filter icon that I can see. If I touch on that filter icon, it navigates me to the My Timesheet filter page, which has 2 sections, the status and the time period. Notice that the start and the end date time period are red, which means the value is required, not populated, and the apply button is grayed out. So let's go through an example where I want to see my historical timesheets for the month of April. Now, I don't know how my time periods are defined, but I know that I'm looking for April timesheets. So I can go ahead into my time period. I can touch on start. The minute I touch on start, the calendar or the date picker appears and it's defaulted to today's date. All right, since I'm looking for April, I can go to April 1st. And again, the apply button is not popular because even the end date is required. So now I can touch on that and it defaults to today's date. So let's just leave that for simplicity. Now that I've populated the start and finish, I've not selected any status. The apply button is available for me to click on. I can touch on that and I see all my historical timesheets for the date range of April 1st to today's date appear. Notice that I see the oldest one starting on March 27. And again, that's because the April 1st falls within this range, so I get that timesheet. And May 10th falls within this range, so I even get this one. So that's why I get all of these timesheets as we had discussed. Let's say that I see all of these, but maybe I am looking for any timesheets for the month of April that might have been returned to me, because I want to make sure that everything that I've submitted have been posted, nothing is returned back and is waiting for me to act on. I can easily do that, leaving my date to be the same, and I can just say, well, only show me my return timesheets. Before I click apply, now I want to point out that notice that because I had populated filter values, the clear button is available. If I touch on clear, it will then reset and show me the same default view of the current, previous, and next time periods. So going back to my example, I now want to see the return timesheets only for this period. Let's apply that, and I see that there is one that is returned to me, which is on April 24th, the time sheet that I submitted. I can touch to open that, and I can see what I have populated. Maybe there's some notes. Yes, there is a note that is populated. I can touch on that, and I see that Ian has told me that I forgot to enter the time for the testing work. I don't think that is correct because I didn't do any testing that week. I did testing the week after it, so I can populate my note back that no testing was done that week. It was done the week after. Now that I have my note, I can post it, and I can then go back. There is no change needed. I have populated my comment. I can go back in here, and I can go back and just resubmit it so that it'll go back to Ian. He can now review my note, and he can then accordingly approve it because now I have cleared his doubt. Once that is done, maybe I can, now that I know that there was supposed to be testing hours populated for the week after, so let me see if there is anything submitted for the week, if it's not been approved or returned for the week after. So let's go apply the same filter, but this time look for submitted. And I see this is the one that I just changed and resubmitted. And the week or two after that is the May 8th one. So there is nothing in between that is of the status of submitted. So what I want to do is I want to see maybe it has been approved by Ian. So I want to go back and filter for approved, and I see yes, Ian has approved the May 1st to May 7th, but this is incorrect because the testing hours should have been added in here. I can open this, and I can then go ahead and return this back to me. So the timesheet is returned. I can now actually unfilter for that. Show me only that is open. Geez, because it was returned, not opened, I have to filter for the return status. So let's go back, and I see that May 1st is now returned to me. I can now change this, saying that this is not correct. It was all 40 hours done for testing because I had to do extra testing. Once that is done, I can go back and resubmit this timesheet with the corrected hours. So you saw the example where I can return my timesheet, and as well as I can filter for different options. Now I want to, let's go ahead and reset so that I can see all my timesheets. So I can use the clear button to reset, and it shows the default layout, which is the current, next, and previous. Now I also know that the week before Memorial Day, which is the week of sometime around May 22nd, I'm going to go on vacation. So I want to populate my timesheet ahead of time because it's also going to be month end, and I want to make sure I'm all good for that. So I can now do that by going back to filter. What I do know is that it's sometime end of the month. So let's just say May 15th to May 31st is what I want to pick. Let's apply that, and I see that there are 3 that return, and this would be the one that is just before Memorial Day that I want to submit my timesheet. So this is the future timesheet that I want to submit. I'm going to touch to open that. I will select the option for vacation time because that's how we track our vacation in my company, and I can say this would be 40 hours of vacation, 40 hours for that week that I will be on vacation. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and submit that specific timesheet, and now I have just submitted a future timesheet, so which I can do it in my mobile app. Next, what I want to do is let's look at my any actions. So I can go into my action items, and I can look at my actions that I might have to act on and act on them. This is existing functionality that existed, but I also know that every time I log into the mobile app, it takes me to my timesheet, but I only do my timesheet once a week. Whereas I look at the action item almost on a daily basis. So I don't want to go to my timesheet and then come into action items. So now with this new release, I can set that as my settings. So I can go into this new menu, which is called settings. And within here, once I land, I can see that there is an option for me to specify my default landing page. And what I want to do is I want my default landing page to be action items instead of the default of my timesheet. Let's see how that works. I'm going to go ahead and log out as Dana. And then let's relog back in. And I am landing directly in action items because that's where I want to go. So now I have the option to go directly to a page that I want to go to on a regular basis. All right. The last thing I wanted to show was my administrator has set my the Clarity theme to be different than the standard blue color. So for that, first I'm going to go into Clarity UX as an administrator. So right here I am in Clarity on UX. I'm under the administration section, and within there I can go into system settings, and for my Clarity we use the theme of light brown. So I'm going to use that option. So light brown, and I see that the light brown doesn't go too well with the light color, so I'm going to pick dark as my foreground. So I've set a branding for my modern UX, and I want my Clarity users that log in to also see the same color so they know which system they have connected to and are taking the branding that we've applied in Clarity. All right, so let's to see that now in action in the mobile. I'm still logged in here as Dana, and I still see the same default one. So let's log out and let's log back in. And I would see that all of a sudden that the color for my app is the same as what is in the Mon UX. So at the time of login, we check the branding that is there on your Clarity server, and we apply that to your mobile app. So now the header is which is set to the background for your Clarity UX, and the foreground is right here, that's applied. The same for the menu. You can see that the background and the foreground is applied based on the Clarity settings. If I go into a specific action, then the buttons are still defaulted to blue, which matches the Clarity UX behavior. So it's consistent with the UX behavior. And that concludes this section. Thank you, everyone.